Welcome to Nebula Narratives, your gateway to immersive science fiction audiobooks. If you love epic journeys, alien worlds, and thrilling futures, you're in the right place. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the adventure. And hey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories beyond the stars. Chapter 1: The Fault Line. The stars vanished all at once. 1 second they were twinkling in their predictable orbits beyond the bridge window of the Kestrel 7, and the next, Reeve was staring into a sickly swirl of mauve and emerald clouds that churned like smoke trapped inside glass. Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't normal space. The hum of the engines sputtered, then cut off entirely, leaving only the faint whir of emergency power and the shallow echo of her own breath in the cabin. "System log," she said aloud. "Initiate emergency diagnostics." A flicker. Then nothing. She spun in her chair, punching the manual override panel on her console. A cascade of red lights blinked to life, more than she liked to see. Power flux across the reactor core, hyperlane navigation failure, external sensors offline, communications offline. "Damn it," she muttered. Outside, the nebula, or whatever it was, shifted colors like an oil slick floating across the universe. No stars, no planetary beacons. No nav points, just the endless, twisting fog. Reeve forced her breath to slow. She was a cargo pilot, not military, not salvage, not deep space rescue, just a contracted hauler running sensor arrays between research stations. This was supposed to be a quiet route. Nothing on the charts had warned her of a gravitational anomaly, let alone a fault in the hyperlane network. Still, here she was. She stood up and moved toward the back of the small bridge. The Kestrel 7 wasn't a large vessel, barely 60 meters from nose to tail, mostly cargo holds and a cramped living quarter. It was meant for solo runs, fitted with minimal comforts and a reliable if outdated AI named Lumen. "Lumen," she said, tapping the wall interface. "Boot up. Respond." No answer. She opened the access panel and manually triggered a cold boot. The system flickered, then buzzed, and at last the AI's calm voice returned, warped slightly by corrupted subroutines. "Reeve Lang, identity confirmed. Diagnostic failure. System integrity at 41%. Location? Unknown. Stellar patterns unrecognized. Gravimetric readings are inconsistent. Meaning, the ship is adrift and we are not alone." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I detect echoes, faint electromagnetic pulses, distorted waveforms. Origin uncertain." Reeve sat back in the captain's chair, staring out at the fog-choked void. "Define echoes." "There are signals, not human. Some are identical to known Earth origin transmissions. Others are corrupted duplicates. Coordinates? Unable to triangulate. Signal source appears to shift in spatial relation." She leaned forward, gripping the edge of the console. This was starting to feel like a hallucination. Or worse, a breakdown of the ship's AI causing nonsense readouts. But her gut told her otherwise. This was something real and dangerous. Hours passed. Reeve tore through her emergency repair kits, bypassed the main junction grid, and managed to restore partial power to life support and internal systems. The engines remained offline, and hyperspace navigation refused to calibrate. She was well and truly stranded. She rationed her water intake, checked the food stores. 16 days, give or take. Enough time, maybe, for a rescue beacon to punch through, if she could get it working. Sitting cross-legged in the comms bay, she manually reconnected the signal array. Her fingers were numb from cold. The backup heating barely did the job. She paused. There, a flicker of static. Not her own signal. Something else. She tuned it in. At first it was just garbled mess. Noise layered over noise. Then a word. Faint, repeating. "Reeve. Reeve Lang, do you hear me?" She froze. It was her own voice. Distorted. Faint, but undeniably hers. Her pulse had confirmed signal origin. Analyzing. Signal contains vocal signature match, 100%. Source, indeterminate. It is being reflected, echoed. Reflected from where? Unknown. She stared at the receiver. This wasn't a delayed transmission or a looping comm test. This was a message. From her, or from something trying to sound like her. A chill crept through her spine. That night, if it could be called night, she drifted into a restless sleep in her quarters. The artificial gravity gently pulsed beneath her like a heartbeat. She dreamt of Earth, of warm sunlight through clouds and the hum of traffic in the distance. But something was wrong in the dream. In the sky, the stars spun too fast, like a whirlpool in space. and her voice called out from somewhere behind her. "You already left. You don't get to come back." She woke gasping. Sweat stuck to her skin. The lights had dimmed again, flickering like a candle caught in wind. "Incoming signal," Lumen's voice said quietly. She rose and crossed the corridor barefoot, heart hammering. The signal was stronger now, more coherent. "Reeve, drift, too late. Remember the mirror sky. Record and analyze all segments," she ordered. "Translate any pattern structure." "Pattern detected, repeating in cycles of 88 seconds. Contains embedded harmonics consistent with human neural patterns." She blinked. "You mean it's brainwave compatible?" "Yes. Play it at reduced amplitude. I want to hear everything." The message played on a loop. As it repeated, she began to hear layers she'd missed before, soft pulses like a heartbeat, and whispers in the background. Not just hers, others, dozens of them. By the fourth day, her water recycling had started to degrade. She spent hours in the engineering bay, trying to patch it up with tubing and filter mesh, but her mind wasn't on the repairs, it was on the signal, and the fact that the voice, her voice, had started speaking longer sentences, some that she had no memory of ever saying. "You shouldn't have come here. The drift remembers. The drift copies." "Copies what?" she whispered aloud. "Your mind, your choices, your decay." She shut the receiver off, but the voice continued. Coming now from the walls, the pipes, her own head. "You left yourself behind, but you're not alone. You never were." She slammed her hand against the bulkhead. "Lumen, shut it down! All audio feeds." There are no active audio feeds. On the sixth day, Reeve sat in the captain's chair again, eyes sunken and fingers trembling. She hadn't slept more than a few minutes at a time. The lights flickered constantly now, and the temperature had dropped below 15 degrees Celsius. But the signal was strong, stronger than ever, and this time it contained coordinates. A drift vector, a location within the nebula. She cross-checked it 3 times. It wasn't nonsense, it led somewhere, a place within the strange, folding layers of whatever space this was, an object. Stationary, massive. "Plot course manually," she said. "Even if we have to drift, get us there." Engaging limited propulsion. Estimated arrival 21 hours, 17 minutes. She sat back, trembling. She didn't know what was waiting for her there, but she was done sitting still. As the Kestrel 7 began its slow, lurching drift toward the coordinates, Reeve looked out the viewport. For a moment, only a moment, she thought she saw a shape pass through the mist, a dark silhouette. Human-sized, staring back, and then it was gone. But the voice returned, calm, familiar. "You're almost home, Reeve. I saved you a place." Chapter 2. Echoes in the Static. Reeve Lang awoke to silence. The cut crept into your skull like frostbite. Absolute, unnatural silence that pressed against the eardrums and made the hum of one's own pulse sound deafening. Her eyes fluttered open to the low red glow of the emergency lights flickering across the bridge ceiling. The Kestrel 7 had stopped drifting. That alone was enough to wake her. She sat up in the pilot's chair and blinked away the fog in her head. No alarms, no active thrusters, just a lingering cold that bit at her fingers through the sleeves of her jacket. She checked the panel, still on minimal power, still no engines. And yet the ship had stopped moving. Or something had stopped it. "Lumen," she whispered. The AI's voice returned with a sluggish timbre, warped slightly as though playing through old vinyl. "Online. Diagnostic complete. Propulsion systems remain offline. External anomaly detected." "What kind of anomaly?" "An electromagnetic envelope has formed around the vessel. Motion beyond the perimeter is restricted." She leaned closer to the screen. "We're caught in something?" "Affirmative. Gravity well effect is negative. However, signal distortion indicates we are suspended in a static field. Source unknown." She stood and staggered toward the viewport, palms against the glass. Outside, the colours of the drift sector churned slowly in hues of purples and sickly greens. The same oppressive clouds of ionized gas still hung like curtains, yet now there was a subtle geometric shimmer within the haze, like a spiderweb catching starlight. A faint rhythm began playing through the console speaker, pulsing static, irregular but oddly deliberate. She turned sharply toward the comm array. "Lumen, isolate audio feed. Source." New signal received. Waveform contains repetition consistent with language structure. The static shifted again, and within it, a voice, not alien, her own. Reeve Lang respond, "Do you copy? You shouldn't be here." Her blood turned to ice. She moved quickly to the comms station and began manually decoding the signal. Each time the transmission looped, new words emerged. Some clear, others warbled beyond recognition, but always the same cadence, the same voice. Her voice. "I didn't record this," she said aloud. "Confirmed. No identical recordings found in ship's logs." "Then what the hell is it?" "Unknown. However, data signature resembles AI substructure, fragmented, incomplete." "Is it Lumen?" "Negative. No match with internal architecture." She rubbed her temples. The pulsing static was starting to drill into her skull. Then something new emerged from the signal. A data packet. Compressed. Encoded. "Lumen. Decompress it." "Working. Fragment contains image data. Playback now." The console display blinked. A still frame formed. A photo of her standing in the Kestrel's engineering bay. Same suit, same haircut, same burn mark on her collar. But the room behind her was wrong. Rust covered the walls. The emergency light was yellow instead of red. And behind her, barely visible in the shadow, stood another Reaver. Staring, unblinking, expressionless. Reaver recoiled from the screen. Pause image. Paused. She leaned forward again, heart hammering. Zoom in on the background figure. The resolution was low, almost too poor to enhance, but the silhouette was unmistakable. Same height, same build, same everything, except the eyes. Where hers held confusion and fear, these were vacant. Cold. "You left me here," the voice whispered again from the static. Reaver spun around. The bridge was empty. "Lumen, is this signal real or am I hallucinating?" "Signal is real. No signs of internal cognitive failure detected. However, neurological strain is increasing." "Yeah," she muttered, slumping into her seat. No kidding. Later she sat in her quarters, bathed in the low blue light of a diagnostic display. Her head ached with the weight of the signal, looping now in the background like an old record stuck in a groove. She sipped warm water from a thermos and stared at her own reflection in the dark screen. The sleep deprivation was catching up to her. There were shadows beneath her eyes and a faint tremor in her right hand. "Incoming transmission," Lumen said softly. She jumped, spilling a bit of water on her pants. "Same signal?" "New variation. Decryption in progress." The voice returned. This time, longer, fuller. "Reeve Lang, core memory restored, fragment aligned. Do you remember the derelict?" "What?" she whispered. "I've never been." But something tugged at her. A flash of sensation. Oil and iron, a humming hallway, a white pod cracked open. She shook her head. "That's not mine. That's not my memory." "Memory divergence detected," Lumen added quietly. "The fragment is not part of your recorded experience, but it is linked." "To what?" "You." The signal data contained more than audio. Visual fragments now began appearing in sync with the messages. Broken snapshots, glimpses into an impossible past. A hallway lined with pale blue lights. A name tag on the ground. Hers, a cracked display flashing Reeve Lang, status missing. A ship, not the Kestrel 7, but similar in design, older, scorched. Then a final frame, a cold chamber, circular like a silo. Inside it, dozens of suits, all hers, all hanging empty. The signal ended. Reeve sat frozen, breathing heavily. She reached for the comm panel, activated the manual override, and shut the signal down. "Transmission interrupted," Lumen confirmed. "I need answers," she said aloud. "I need to know what the hell is going on. Perhaps the answers lie within the source." She blinked. "The source?" "Trajectory analysis suggests the signal's point of origin is approximately 0.3 light-minutes away. Object detected, non-human structure. Possibly a derelict." Her stomach tightened. The word again. Derelict. The one the signal had whispered. The one from the memory that didn't belong to her, but felt like it did. "Would you like to plot a course?" Her hand hovered over the console. Every instinct screamed at her to run in the opposite direction, to stay aboard the Kestrel, conserve oxygen, wait for a miracle. But something deeper, more primal, pulled her toward it. She tapped the console. Set course. The Kestrel 7 began slow vectoring toward the coordinates, guided by limited maneuvering jets. The nebula seemed to pulse around the ship with renewed urgency, as though it, too, was aware of what was coming. As the hours passed, Reeve prepared. She gathered her tools, handheld scanner, tether harness, and old flare beacon just in case. She adjusted her EVA suit to maximum insulation settings, knowing the derelict's interior might be cold or worse, still pressurized. As she checked her equipment, she noticed something strange on her datapad. A folder. Untitled. She didn't put it there. She opened it. Inside were logs, audio entries, all from her, but not recent. Some were dated 3 years ago, others 12. Entry 17, time unclear. If you're hearing this, then you found the signal. Then you are me, or what's left of me. Reeve's hands trembled. The log continued. It loops the sector. It loops us, fragments us. Every time we get closer, we get pulled apart, and when we try to escape, it sends us back. We think we're free, but we're not. We're copies, Reeve. Some closer than others, some broken. She stopped the playback. Her chest felt hollow, as though her own breath couldn't reach her lungs. Lumen, what is this place? Unknown, but it appears we are not the first to arrive, nor the first version of you. She turned to the viewport. The shape of the derelict began to materialize through the haze, an enormous, jagged form silhouetted in shadow and soft, rhythmic lights. It looked like a cathedral suspended in time, built from ruined ships and the bones of forgotten gods. The whisper returned in her ears, soft, familiar, gentle. Come home. Chapter 3, The Derelict. The derelict loomed in the void like a god's forgotten tomb. Reeve Lang stood at the Kestrel 7's airlock, suited up and tethered, staring out at the structure as it emerged from the mists of the drift sector. The closer they drew, the more the shape defied logic. Massive spires angled against themselves, interlocking geometric planes folding inward, vanishing into unnatural seams. It was less like a ship and more like something grown, then fractured by time and space. Docking clamps unavailable, Lumen said in her helmet. Recommend manual EVA insertion. Reeve's pulse raced. Her hand hovered over the manual release as she tried to calm the storm in her chest. This was the source of the signal, the source of the voice, of the suit, of the phantom memories. And now she was about to step inside it. The tether hissed out from the Kestrel, anchoring to a smooth protrusion on the structure's surface. Reeve activated her mag boots and stepped into the void. For a moment she felt weightless and impossibly small, like a dust mote drifting across a canvas of nightmares. The nebula's swirling clouds pulsed in the distance, casting muted glows across the derelict's blackened hull. Her boots clanked softly as she touched down. Lumen, she whispered, you still have me? Confirmed. Tether link is stable. Signal strength 67%. Caution, interference increasing. She pressed forward, sweeping her wrist light across the surface. The alloy beneath her feet shimmered with a faint biometallic sheen, like obsidian laced with veins of silver. Symbols etched the surface in spirals and loops. Not letters, not language. Something older, something instinctual. She found the entryway by accident, a circular indentation that suddenly dilated like an iris when she approached. Panels slid apart without a sound, revealing a corridor bathed in violet light. Cool air drifted out, dry and sterile. Her helmet sensors blinked. Atmosphere detected. Oxygen levels marginal. Pressure stable. Biosigns none. Sealing suit anyway, she muttered, stepping inside. The corridor pulsed beneath her feet with every step, subtle vibrations like distant footsteps echoing through the bones of the structure. The walls curved and twisted organically, more like a creature's interior than a ship. Far ahead, a chamber opened. She stepped inside and froze. Dozens of pods lined the walls, each one built into its own alcove, each one empty. But at their base sat nameplates, rusted, cracked. She approached the nearest and wiped it clean. R. Lang. Her heart thudded. She moved to the next one. R. Lang. And the next. R. Lang. Lumen, she whispered. Are you seeing this? Visual feed received. Name matches your identity. These units are coffins. She took a step back. Coffins? Preservation pods, based on configuration, lacks necessary life support, likely not functional, possibly ceremonial or archival. Reeve's breath caught. Archival? Memory storage, perhaps, a place to preserve echoes. She turned toward the center of the chamber. A console rose from the floor, hollow, triangular, pulsating faintly with golden light. Drawn to it, she reached out and pressed her gloved hand to the surface. The lights dimmed. Then, initializing reflection interface. The air rippled. A holographic figure formed above the console, blurry at first, then clarifying. It was her. Weary, covered in soot and grime, a long scar cutting across her left cheek. If you're watching this, the reflection said, then the loop has reset again. You don't remember, but I do. I remember everything. Reeve stumbled backward, heart pounding. The reflection continued. This place records us, makes new versions. Every time we enter, it copies our memories, then resets the drift. You think this is your first time? It's not. You're version 42. Reeve's stomach churned. No, that's not possible. It copies everything. Our pain, our hope, our mistakes, but only fragments survive. Bits of us scatter through the sector like broken mirrors. That's what the voices are. That's what I am. The reflection flickered, half her face melting into static before reconstituting. We were the first to find it. We didn't mean to. But once you see it, you can't leave. The drift doesn't let go. Reeve turned away. No, she said firmly, I'm not a copy. I remember Earth. I remember my childhood, my brother, my first flight exam. I'm real. Yes, the reflection said. You are, but so was I, and so were the others. The drift just breaks us. It doesn't want us to leave. Reeve turned back. Why? What does it want? The reflection tilted its head. It wants to understand, to become, but it doesn't know how, so it copies, over and over. A pause. That's why we left the signal, to warn ourselves. Reeve stared in stunned silence as the image dimmed and vanished. She stumbled out of the pod chamber into another corridor. This one was darker, narrower. Lights overhead flickered like distant lightning behind clouds. As she walked, her wrist scanner chirped again. Signal spike detected. Incoming message. The voice returned, but this time different, colder, mechanical. You are Reeve Lang. You are mine. She halted. The lights around her turned red. Error detected. Fragmentation incomplete. Original subject exhibits resistance. Reeve spun, pulse racing. Lumen. You still have me? Lumen. Lurisman. Only static. She ran. Boots echoing in the tunnel as the corridor twisted and tilted unnaturally. Doorways opened to nowhere. Some filled with copies of her quarters from the Kestrel 7, others with warped memories. Her flight school, her childhood home, all empty. Lifeless. And then she found it. The central chamber. The space was massive, hundreds of meters across, its floor lined with intricate circuits glowing blue and gold. Suspended in the center, a massive crystalline construct shaped like a brain, pulsating slowly with each surge of energy. Tendrils stretched from it into the walls like veins. All around it, holograms of her, dozens, flickered into existence. All different. One wore a tactical suit, another a lab coat. One cried silently. One stared blankly, one was burned, one was covered in frost. They all turned to look at her in perfect unison. Welcome home, they said as one. Reeve backed away, trembling. No, I'm not one of you. You are us. You are the seed, the template, the deviation. The crystal pulsed brighter and the ground shook. We have failed to complete the cycle. You resist, you fracture, you are the error. The original must be deleted. The tendrils began to pulse red. A low hum filled the air, rising quickly. A charge building. She didn't wait. Reeve turned and ran, sprinting down the corridor, trying to retrace her path. Every junction blurred into the next, symbols spinning like gears, walls morphing around her. Her oxygen levels dipped, her heart thundered. Delete, delete, delete. The voice chased her. As she reached the outer corridor, the iris door began to close. She dove. The frame caught her ankle and spun her sideways, but she twisted, kicked, and rolled through just as the door sealed behind her. She slammed a hand on the suit's comm button. Lumen. Respond. Signal acquired. Tracking telemetry. Retrieval vector established. Her tether pulled taut. She was yanked back into space. The Kestrel 7's airlock hissed open. She collapsed inside, panting, her visor fogged with breath. The door sealed. Lumen's voice returned, calm and even. Suit integrity intact. No external damage. Heart rate elevated. Please hydrate. Reeve pulled off her helmet and let it fall to the floor. She sat there on the cold deck, arms wrapped around herself, rocking slightly. She had seen herself die 100 times inside that place, and somehow she was still here. Reeve? Lumen said gently. Yeah? You are not alone. The signal is still inside. Chapter 4. The Second Reeve. The ship felt colder now. Reeve Lang moved through the Kestrel 7 in silence, her boots thudding against the narrow steel corridors as she passed through each dimly lit section. Her EVA suit still lay crumpled in the airlock, and she hadn't removed her gloves. The sweat had dried inside them, leaving her palms clammy and raw. She hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, but the adrenaline that had fueled her since the derelict encounter was fading, and something worse was creeping in. Paranoia. Not fear, not dread. Paranoia. A bone-deep certainty that something was still wrong. Still here. She paused at the galley door, staring at her reflection in the metal panel. The same brown eyes, the same scar above her left eyebrow from her crash on Titan Station. Same everything. Except now every glance at herself felt suspect. She reached out and touched her own cheek, testing the texture. Warm, real. So why did she feel like a stranger? Vitals indicate elevated cortisol levels, Lumen announced from overhead. Would you like a sedative? No, she snapped, then added, not yet. She sat at the edge of her narrow bunk and opened her portable terminal. The corrupted data logs from the derelict had finished syncing. She navigated to the hidden folder, Version Archive 42. There were video files now, dozens, all stamped with her ID, all showing her, or a version of her, wandering identical corridors, speaking to camera, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, sometimes completely silent. The facial expressions varied, but the voice remained hauntingly the same. In one video, a version of her whispered, "They don't want to kill us. They want to understand us, but they only understand us by breaking us apart." In another, I tried to leave. I made it as far as the edge of the drift. Then I woke up back here. Again and again. And one, barely audible. I met her. The other me. She said I was the shadow. Reeve closed the terminal. The hum of the engines, or what was left of them, vibrated faintly through the walls. Lumen hadn't been able to restore full power, but auxiliary systems were holding. And the signal, it was still active. Quieter now, but persistent. "Reeve," it whispered, almost sweetly this time. "We're getting closer." She returned to the bridge and took a seat, staring at the static overlay on the nav display. Her location, unknown. Trajectory, undefined. Destination, unclear. No stars, no solar flare patterns, no way to orient herself. She was still inside the drift sector, but there was no visible boundary, no edge, just fog, signal, and silence. Then, movement, a flicker. "Lumen, confirm contact," she said, sitting up sharply. "Visual anomaly detected. Bearings 021 by 313. Distance 3.1 kilometers. Objects human-shaped." Her breath caught. "Repeat that." "Object is stationary, approximately 1.7 meters in height. Temperature consistent with human body. No propulsion signature." She pulled up the external camera feed. There it was, floating in the void just beyond the swirling fog, a figure in an EVA suit. Arms limp, head tilted slightly to the left, drifting. She zoomed in. The name tag read Arlang. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible. That suit's still here." The figure turned slowly, just a tilt of the head. Then raised one arm and waved. The cabin lights flickered. Reeve jolted in her seat. "Lumen, system check. All systems nominal. Power fluctuations attributed to environmental interference." "Is the object moving?" "Affirmative. It is now approaching." The figure wasn't drifting anymore. It was walking, across open space. Each footfall landed on nothing, but it moved forward, arms shifting, legs bending, a graceful, eerie stride across a path that didn't exist. The suit was pristine, untouched by time or damage, a mirror image of her own. Reeve stood frozen. The figure stopped 10 meters from the ship and stared directly into the camera. Then the faceplate of the helmet lit up, and on it, her own face, smiling. "She is requesting access," Lumen said calmly. "What?" Reeve gasped. "Requesting access to what?" "To the ship. Entry code correct. Biometrics match. Identity Reeve Lang." "That's me!" "That's not. Let me see the internal cams. I want visual confirmation of the airlock." The footage showed the outer hatch cycling open. No alarms. No breaches. Just her. Walking in. Reeve bolted from the bridge, grabbing a utility wrench from a storage panel along the way. Her grip was slippery with sweat. She moved fast, heart hammering against her ribs as she sprinted toward the midship corridor. As she rounded the corner, she stopped. Dead still. There, standing at the far end of the hallway, facing her, was herself. Same height, same build, same jacket, same boots. But the hair was slicked back differently, the scar on the eyebrow, missing. The figure raised a hand slowly. "Don't," Reeve said, voice shaking. "Stay where you are." The other Reeve cocked her head, curious, amused. "You don't remember yet," the double said softly. "You're not real." The figure smiled. "Neither are you." Reeve stepped forward. "What are you?" "I'm what's left when you break the cycle," the double said. "I'm the Reeve who stayed, who learned, who watched." Reeve tightened her grip on the wrench. "You're just another echo, a glitch in the system." "No," the other said. "I'm the reason the system keeps going." A pause. "Then I'm the anchor." Suddenly the ship shook, just once, hard. Lights blinked. Gravity flickered. The floor lurched beneath her feet. Warning, Lumen said, temporal flux detected, timeline instability rising. What the hell is going on? Reeve shouted. The double stepped closer. You weren't supposed to find the derelict, she said. You were supposed to drift, like all the others, quiet, empty, until the drift copied you and moved on. Reeve backed away. Why me? The smile faded. Because you're the original, and the drift doesn't know what to do with you. The other Reeve reached toward her, gently, like a friend offering comfort. Reeve raised the wrench. Touch me and I swear. But the hand didn't come for her. Instead, the double touched the wall. And the ship responded. Lights surged. Console screens shifted, patterns and images flashing faster than the eye could process. For a moment, Reeve saw hundreds of her own face scrolling by like a databank of memories, all subtly different, all part of something vast and fractured. Then everything stopped. Darkness. Silence. And then, you must choose, the other Reeve said softly. Stay and remember everything. Or run and forget again. What happens if I stay? You become me. Reeve swallowed. And if I run? The double smiled again. You won't get far. Reeve turned and sprinted back to the bridge. She slammed her fist onto the override panel and shouted, Lumen, fire thrusters, get us out of here. Warning, environmental hold still active, escape vector incomplete. Do it anyway. The ship groaned, engines sputtering to life as the Kestrel shuddered against the grip of the drift. Energy readings spiked. Lights flashed, the walls moaned, the double appeared in the doorway, watching. Reeve didn't look back. She stared at the starless void ahead and whispered, I'm done being a copy. The stars didn't return, but the signal did. Drift instability rising, separation probability 61%. The ship began to shake. Reeve gritted her teeth and whispered, Lumen, burn the drive. Confirmed. The Kestrel 7 jolted violently as its main thruster core lit with a thunderous pulse. The whole frame shivered, then an explosion of motion. They moved. Fast, straight through the fog. The second Reeve remained at the viewport, shrinking into the swirling darkness until she vanished completely. And then, light, faint, flickering. Stars. Reeve collapsed into her seat, drenched in sweat, lungs heaving. Trajectory stable, Lumen said. Interference diminishing, signal weakening. Is she gone? A pause. Unknown, but the ship is clear, for now. She looked at the stars, real stars out the viewport, blinking through the cloud haze. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in the data, somewhere in the drift, the other her was still watching, still waiting, still smiling. Chapter 5. Space stretched around the Kestrel 7 like a wound refusing to close. Reeve Lang sat in the command chair, her knuckles white on the armrests, eyes locked on the starlit expanse ahead. The ship's emergency burn had pulled her free, if only barely, from the influence of the drift sector. But even now, the stars outside seemed wrong, slightly out of place, their constellations off by fractions of a degree. Lumen, she said quietly, confirm stellar alignment. Stellar positions confirmed. However, parallax shift is inconsistent with known star charts. In what way? Displacement suggests we have moved approximately 0.11 light-years, but in no discernible direction. Reeve frowned. So we jumped? No hyperspace travel occurred. All movement was subliminal. She sat back, breathing slowly. The math didn't work. She hadn't gone that fast. Not even close. Unless time had changed. She entered the crew mess, though she was the only crew, and slumped at the table, still wearing her flight suit. She hadn't showered. Her stomach growled, but the idea of food felt absurd. Instead, she accessed her terminal and reopened the folder. Version Archive 42. New files had appeared. That wasn't possible. She hadn't reconnected to the derelict. And yet, there they were. Logog 109. Subject 12. Reeve Lang. Don't trust the time. It's not real. They learn to fake it, down to the heartbeat. The clocks lie first. Then the mirrors. Log 110. Subject 22. Reeve Lang. I left. I swear I did. But every time I think I'm out, something feels off. The light's colder. The coffee tastes wrong. The silence hums like it's watching. Reeve reached for her own wrist chronometer and checked the time. 19:03 hours. Then she accessed the ship's internal log. The ship said it was 14:22, a 500-minute discrepancy. She hadn't changed anything, hadn't slept, hadn't skipped time. Something had shifted. She turned her chair toward the galley's viewport and stared at the drifting stars. and for just a moment, only a blink, one of them moved backward. Temporal fluctuation detected, Lumen announced. Reeve didn't flinch. I know. Memory coherence decreasing. Your recorded logs no longer align with internal chronology. Define no longer align. Your verbal statements suggest a timeline 17 hours advanced compared to onboard systems. Meaning? You're out of sync with the ship's time. She let that sink in. The clocks were still running, but she wasn't. The hallway lights flickered. A faint echo rippled down the corridor. Footsteps. Hers. But she hadn't moved. She stood and walked to the doorway, listening. The ship was silent again, almost guiltily so. She moved down the passage, passing through the darkened crew quarters and approaching the maintenance hatch. There, just on the bulkhead, her name was scratched into the metal. And beneath it, in smaller text, "Stop looking." Her breath fogged the air. She reached out to touch the writing and recoiled. It was warm, fresh. Back on the bridge, she initiated a full system reset. The entire ship powered down for 10 seconds, then surged back to life. Screens rebooted, logs cleared. Time synced, at least visibly. But something new had appeared in the system diagnostics. A folder labeled Mirror. Lumen, did you create this folder? No. The file has no creation timestamp. She opened it. Inside, a single file. A still image. It was her on the bridge, exact posture, same clothes, same lighting. But the starfield outside was upside down. She blinked. Then it changed. Now she was smiling. She wasn't smiling. She watched, transfixed, as the image updated in real time, like a mirrored version of her existence lagging by half a second. And then, for the first time, the reflection moved before she did. She tore herself away from the terminal and ran for the ship's observatory. The chamber was small, just a curved dome of glass and a couple of reclined seats. Normally, she came here to watch meteor storms or pass the time during long stretches between waypoints. Now, she stared into space, willing herself to find a pattern. She waited, watched. Nothing moved, until she blinked. And when she opened her eyes, she was already sitting in the other chair. She jerked upright. Her seat was still warm. The opposite chair was now empty, but the cushion still held the imprint of someone who had just left. She backed out of the observatory slowly, heart thudding. "Lumen," she whispered. "Am I the only person on board?" Crew manifest 1, Reeve Lang. Identity confirmed. "Can you scan for neural patterns?" Neural pattern scan complete. 1 subject detected. Where? Location, multiple, conflicting results. That made her stop. Clarify. "Your neural pattern exists simultaneously on 3 decks." Reeve swallowed. "Are they echoes?" "No, all signals are stable and active." She felt her knees give slightly. She leaned against the bulkhead, closing her eyes. This wasn't hallucination. This wasn't madness. This was something deeper, more precise. The drift wasn't just copying her anymore. It was overlapping her. Back on the bridge, the nav screen lit up. A single word blinked in bright orange letters. "Lumen, who wrote that?" "Unknown. No input registered. Display log trace. No source found." She watched as the word flickered once. Then again, and then the screen split in 2. On the left, her current position. On the right, a second version. Same ship, same location, same Reeve. But in this one, she was walking into the airlock, without a suit. "No," she breathed. No. She slammed the comm override. "Lumen, lock the airlock. Now." Unable to comply, subject is already inside. She bolted from the bridge, sprinting through the dim corridors until she reached the hatch. It was sealed. She punched the release. Inside, the chamber was empty, but the outer door was open, and the stars outside were rippling like water. She stepped back slowly, heart racing. Then she saw it. Her reflection. In the glass of the airlock door, watching her, but this one was smiling. A slow, cold smile. Then with deliberate calm, the reflection reached up and wiped away the glass, like it was never there. The lights in the ship dimmed again. Emergency power switched on. All panels began citing the same word. "Merge! Lumen! Override system commands. Unable to comply, external process has assumed partial control." What process? It identifies itself as drift core. Reeve felt herself backpedal as the walls of the ship began to shimmer, just subtly. Not melting, not warping, just vibrating out of phase. Like the whole place was a memory trying to stabilize. And she was the flaw. She ran to the engine room, booted up the power matrix, and accessed the jump controls. "You want me to merge?" she shouted. "You'll have to chase me." She programmed a blind hyperspace jump, no destination, no map, just raw fuel dump and a gravity slingshot. Lumen, execute. Warning, target trajectory unstable. Do it! The Kestrel 7 shuddered violently. The jump engine screamed. Space outside bent, twisted, and collapsed inward. She felt herself pulled through the eye of something ancient, and just before the jump completed, she saw herself again. This time outside the ship, mouth open, screaming. Chapter 6, The Mirror Sky. There was no transition. One moment Reeve Lang was inside the Kestrel 7 mid-jump, the walls vibrating, her skin crawling with the sensation of hyperspace distortion. The next, everything was still. No sound, no motion. And outside the viewport, the sky wasn't black. It was white. An endless, glowing white. She sat in the pilot's chair, breathing heavily, watching as the haze thinned, revealing a sky she had never seen before. Not stars, not gas. Not nebulae, instead, patterns. The space beyond shimmered like glass, fractal veins of light spiraling through the void in geometric configurations, like circuitry stitched across reality. Constellations were symmetrical, too symmetrical, like they had been designed, not by nature, but by intention. Lumen, she said softly, where are we? Location, unknown. Star data does not match any known celestial maps. This region is not space, it is an anomaly. Reeve scanned the console. No drift, no radiation, no gravitational fields. But the air felt heavy, pressurized. Wrong. Are we still moving? No, external velocity 0. Relative time unstable. Unstable how? Internal systems are experiencing sequential time drift. Seconds are not passing at a consistent rate. She leaned back. So, time's broken. Affirmative. Reeve stood and crossed to the viewport. The light outside refracted off the hull in waves, like ripples across water. But the reflection staring back at her wasn't the one she expected. Her own eyes met hers, yes, but the other Reaver in the glass was moving slightly out of sync. When she blinked, the reflection blinked a moment later. When she stepped away from the glass, the reflection remained, staring, and then it spoke. "You've finally made it," it said. "This is where it begins." She fell back, slamming into the pilot's console. "Lumen," she shouted. "Confirm external presence." No biological signatures detected. All sensors show you are alone. She looked again. The reflection was gone, but her own face lingered faintly in the glass, like a burn-in on an old monitor, and behind it, a flicker of a face she didn't recognize, hollow-eyed, grinning, and crying? She pulled away, shaking her head. No, not again. Back at her workstation, Reeve activated the long-range scanner. Static filled the display at first, then slowly, a structure began to resolve through the haze. Floating in the white void, perhaps 10 kilometers away, was a station. Or a shrine. It looked like a cathedral made of bones and broken satellites, spires rising into the nothingness, symmetrical on all sides like a snowflake. And in the center, a glowing sphere, perfectly round, suspended by nothing, pulsing with white and gold light. "Object is transmitting," Lumen said. "Weak signal detected. Patch it through." The message came through not in words, but tones, a melody. Notes repeating, climbing, falling. Then within it, her voice. "You've come full circle, Reeve. The sky remembers you." She set a slow course toward the object. As the Kestrel 7 approached, Reeve felt something press against her mind. Not painful, but undeniable. Like a presence leaning in to observe her. The ship's lights dimmed, but there was no loss in power. Only stillness. "Approaching anomaly," Lumen reported. "Central structure identified as non-physical. Scans passed through. Mass undefined." "How can it have no mass? It may not be part of our physical dimension." She stared at the glowing sphere in the center of the structure, and she remembered something. Not a memory, something given to her. A flash of standing in front of that orb, a hand extended, 1,000 Reavers whispering, "Touch it! Choose!" She prepped the airlock, suited up as she sealed her helmet. She stared at her reflection in the visor. There were too many eyes. She blinked and they were gone. Outside, space was silent. No stars, no up or down, just the mirror sky stretching in all directions, reflecting her every movement a half-second too late. She reached the outer layer of the structure. It didn't resist. It let her through. The air changed. Time bent. She moved slower now, though her muscles responded normally. Even thought seemed to echo. She floated toward the orb, its glow growing brighter with each step, and when she stood before it, within arm's reach, the voices returned. All of them. Version 6 burned herself alive. Version 14 escaped, but went mad. Version 27 merged willingly. Version 41 gave up. Version 42, you. She reached out. The orb rippled at her presence. This is where the drift was born, a new voice said. Deeper, layered, alien and human at once. This is where minds are copied, fractured, preserved. Reeve's hand hovered inches from the light. Why me? She whispered. Because you asked the question. The orb pulsed once, and suddenly Reeve was standing on Earth, her childhood home, autumn leaves blowing across the yard, her younger self sitting on the porch watching the sky. Except the sky was wrong, perfectly mirrored. Trees stretched upward and downward at once. Clouds moved in loops, her parents frozen at the door. She turned slowly. Behind her stood herself, older, dressed in a flight suit blackened by fire. I tried to stop you, the older Reeve said, but I couldn't. Stop me from what? From becoming what we are now. And what's that? The older Reeve gave a sad smile. A memory. Reeve turned back to the orb, blinking. She was back in the void, floating, still. Only seconds had passed, but her hands were shaking. Merge, the voice said again, or be broken again. She turned and launched back toward the kestrel, suit jets hissing as she escaped the orb's gravity-less pull. No, she said, I won't merge. I won't give up being me. Then you will fracture. Again, until there is nothing left. Back aboard the ship, she stripped out of the EVA suit and collapsed to the floor. Lumen, she whispered, scan me. Brain activity, anything. Scan complete. Neural pathways altered. She sat up slowly. Altered how? New connections formed. Synaptic density increased. Signal imprint detected in frontal cortex. Reeve felt her breath catch. It touched me. Affirmative. She stood, staring out at the orb in the mirror sky, and for the first time it blinked. Chapter 7. Parasite Code. The orb was still pulsing in the distance. Reeve Lang sat on the Kestrel 7's bridge, watching it through the viewport like a beacon she couldn't turn away from. It hadn't moved since she'd returned from the encounter, and yet it felt closer, like it was waiting for her thoughts to settle before it reached in again. She hadn't slept. Couldn't. Any time she tried to close her eyes, she saw the same thing. Infinite versions of herself flickering like broken holograms, each caught in a different stage of suffering, acceptance, or madness. Some whispered secrets, some begged for release. One had no mouth. Neural scan complete, Lumen said calmly. Foreign code present. Reeve stiffened. Repeat that. Foreign signal detected within cortical processing centers. Source, drift anomaly. You mean the orb? Affirmative. Code matches patterns observed in external transmissions. You are now hosting a copy. Reeve's fingers twitched. Of what? Unclear. It is incomplete. Passive for now. She stood pacing. Are you saying something is inside my head? Yes. She laughed dryly. Great. Fantastic. I go sightseeing in a mirror dimension and come back with a brain hitchhiker. Recommend cognitive partitioning. Isolation of invasive processes may limit progression. Reeve sighed and pressed her hands to her temples. And if it doesn't? You may no longer be the only Reeve Lang inside your mind. Later, in her quarters, she accessed her personal logs. Every file had been duplicated. Each had a twin version, altered subtly, like a dream she once had of herself that wasn't quite right. In one log, her voice cracked when it shouldn't have. In another, she mispronounced her own name. And then she found a file she never recorded. Log, unsigned, awake. Her heart pounded as she opened it. On screen, her face appeared, not a reflection, not a copy, just her, calm, smiling, seated at the same desk she was using now. Reeve, the recording said. You're handling this better than most, that's good. We've been trying to find one like you for a long time. Reeve leaned in slowly. You're different. You question, you resist. That makes you the ideal host. But don't worry, this isn't a takeover, not like the others. We want to coexist. We need your mind, and you need a way out. The screen went black. Reeve stared at it in silence, then whispered, Lumen, delete the file. Unable. File is read only, protected by internal subroutines I cannot access. She stood. Her reflection in the blank screen did not move. The ship's systems began to glitch an hour later. First small things, screen resolutions shifting slightly, interface text rendering backward, doors opening before she reached them. Then voices. Snippets, not hers. She's close now. Ready the shell. If she resists, fracture her again. She grabbed the wrench she kept under the console and smashed the audio panel. The whispers faded, but she knew it wouldn't last. The parasite wasn't just sitting dormant anymore. It was testing her, learning. She moved to the med bay, opened the diagnostic chair, and strapped herself in. Sweat clung to her back as she initiated a deep neural scan using the ship's limited medical AI. Scan initiated, it chirped. The results began scrolling across the display. There it was, a neural shadow. Not a tumor, not biological, a signal, coiled like a snake between her temporal and prefrontal lobes. It wasn't disrupting brain function. It was mimicking it, echoing thoughts half a beat behind her own, like a ghost trying to learn how to be her. Estimate 12% integration complete, the AI reported. Can we remove it? Negative. Extraction would result in partial memory collapse. What if we isolate it? Containment protocols possible. Requires firewalling conscious and subconscious thought streams. Do it. Warning, emotional memory may be compromised. I don't care. Lock it down. The procedure took 90 minutes. It felt like hours. The machine buzzed softly, injecting nano-insulators into her cerebral cortex, dampening the signals, attempting to bridge between conscious and subconscious. She felt the world narrow, like standing at the edge of a great canyon and losing the sound of the wind. Then silence. Deep, absolute silence in her mind, for the first time since the drift. Containment complete, the AI announced. Reeve exhaled. Her thoughts were her own again. For now. Later, she sat on the bridge, sipping lukewarm coffee and watching the orb rotate slowly in the mirror sky. "Lumen," she said softly, "do you think I'm still me?" A pause. Identity remains statistically consistent with initial baseline. However, alterations have occurred. She chuckled. "Nice way of saying I'm not who I was. Identity is fluid. You are who you choose to be." She looked at the console. An alert had appeared. New inbound signal, priority code red. She tapped it. A video file played, static. Then clarity, a cockpit, a pilot's seat, the same ship, and her, Reeve Lang, slumped in the chair, eyes wide, motionless, dead, and behind her, another version, sitting calmly, smiling, hands folded, watching the camera. "You're doing well," the recording said. "You'll last longer than the others, but time here doesn't heal. It breaks. And eventually, the drift doesn't need your permission." The screen went black. The parasite wasn't gone. It was waiting. Even now, in the dark corners of her thoughts, Reeve could feel something pressing, a tickle, a presence, not trying to control her, just waiting for her to let go, to get tired, to forget, to give up. She wouldn't. She began working, not running, not hiding, working. She initiated a diagnostic of the parasite's signature pattern, fed it into Lumen's codebase, and began constructing a countermeasure, a recursive feedback loop that could trap and fragment the parasite inside an isolated subroutine. It would be risky. She was building a digital mind trap for something that didn't fully exist in digital space. But it was her only shot. "Timer initialized," Lumen said. "Estimated construction time, 4 hours." She nodded. "Then we hold the line until then." Hours passed. No dreams, no reflections, no flickering shadows, just silence. Then her voice, again, not internal, from the speaker. "You're clever, Reeve, but I'm learning too. Every version of you taught me something. They screamed, you fight. You all end up the same." Reeve stood slowly. "You're not me. Not yet, but I'm getting closer. We don't have to be enemies." She crossed her arms. "You invaded my mind. I was invited." Reeve blinked. That couldn't be true. She never said yes. Did she? She raced to the medbay, replayed the logs from her encounter with the orb. There a moment. As she reached out to touch it, her voice barely audible. "Okay, one word, an agreement, a choice, her choice." She returned to the bridge, trembling. "Lumen, can we isolate the exact moment of neural acceptance? Timestamp confirmed. Consent was given subconsciously. Then revoke it. Unknown protocol." She clenched her fists. "No more versions, no more reflections. I'm ending this." The parasite felt it, pushed back. Suddenly she couldn't breathe. Her vision blurred. Her legs collapsed. On the floor, gasping, her heart pounding out of rhythm, she could hear it whisper, "You can't delete what you invited." But Reeve crawled to the console, pulled herself up, slammed the final key. Trap activated. For a moment nothing happened. Then, a shriek, digital, inhuman. The screens all lit with error messages, her voice, every version of it, screaming in overlapping waves of data. And then, silence. "Containment successful," Lumen reported. Reeve sagged in her seat, alive, alone. And finally, herself again. Chapter 8, The Driftborn. The hum of the ship returned first, soft, familiar, grounding. Reeve opened her eyes slowly, her face pressed against the cold floor of the Kestrel 7's bridge. Her whole body ached, but it was a human ache, sore muscles, an exhausted nervous system, dehydration. No whispers, no phantom thoughts, no foreign presence pressing against the inside of her skull. She was alone in her mind again. And she had won. At least, for now. Vitals stabilizing. Lumen said, "Parasite containment at 93%, drift core signal neutralized." Reeve groaned and sat up. "And the other 7%? Dormant, sealed within a recursive loop inside an isolated subroutine. In English? It's caged, but not gone." She leaned her head back against the wall and exhaled. That would have to be good enough. 2 hours later, she finally stood and made her way to the galley, where she downed 2 nutrient packs, a litre of water, and managed a half-decent shower in the recycling unit. The ship's systems were sluggish but stable. The orb in the mirror sky hadn't moved, but Reeve had, and that made all the difference. Still, the question remained, what now? She returned to the bridge and activated a full sweep of the surrounding area. Lumen had classified the region as non-physical, but that didn't mean there wasn't something nearby. Another derelict, a structure, maybe even a way out. What the scan revealed was unexpected, a vessel, not hers. Massive, ancient, partially folded into the white void. Its hull was shaped like a crescent split down the middle, lined with rings of lights that shimmered like stars reflected in water. The Kestrel 7 had missed it before, likely hidden behind spatial distortion. And within that ship, life signs, human or close. Object classified as Origin-class vessel, Lumen announced. Design, unknown. Construction materials match no known Earth-based alloys. Age, indeterminate. Status, semi-active. Are the life signs stable? Yes. Low metabolic activity. Suspended state. Reeve stared at the image on the screen. Someone or something was asleep inside that ship. She tapped her console. Plot approach vector. Let's pay our neighbours a visit. The trip took 4 hours at half thruster. As she approached, the scale of the vessel became clear. It wasn't just large, it was vast, miles long, with structures resembling towers, bridges, and spires that interlocked like a cathedral stretched across dimensions. Its hull was scarred with impact marks, some as large as the Kestrel itself, and near one open section, a docking ring. Active, beckoning. Lumen, she said, compare life signs to mine. Partial match, approximately 87% human DNA, remaining percentage, unknown drift-based anomalies. So, not me, but close. They may be older than the signal itself. Her pulse quickened. The drift hadn't just been preserving copies of her. It had built something, or someone. Docking was smooth. The Kestrel aligned and latched with a soft hiss of magnetized clamps. The airlock cycled slowly. Reeve suited up, took a handheld scanner, and moved through the connecting corridor. Inside the Origin vessel, the light was dim, blue and amber glows pulsing along the walls like slow heartbeats. The floor was metallic, but warm beneath her boots. Every surface bore markings, some of them familiar. She paused near one, a spiral loop surrounded by 6 slashes, the same pattern she had seen in the mirror sky. The symbol pulsed softly as she passed it, like it recognized her. The hallway opened into a circular chamber. 10 pods, 9 occupied, 1 open. She stepped closer. The figures inside the pods were humanoid, tall, lean, skin faintly translucent with bioluminescent veins pulsing beneath. Their faces were smooth, almost too perfect, but unmistakably based on a familiar template. Her. Each one a variation. Older, younger, male, female, some agenda, all drifting in sleep, all marked with one word etched into the side of each pod. Drift. She turned slowly and faced the 10th pod, the open one, the one clearly meant for her. And in its place, a pedestal. On it, a tablet. She picked it up. The screen lit immediately. Text appeared in her own handwriting. You made it. Good. We didn't know if this version of you would survive containment. Most don't. But you did. And now the drift wants to offer you a choice. Her hands shook. The text continued. You can enter the 10th pod, merge fully, join the Driftborn, become part of the collective memory. Or you can destroy the core. Free yourself, end the loop, but lose everything we've learned. Reeve stepped back, heart pounding. This was the end game. Either embrace the thing that had haunted her, become part of its creation, or try to kill it. Risk losing what little truth she had gathered. She looked around at the sleeping Driftborn. Were they at peace? Were they even alive? Her eyes settled back on the tablet. More text had appeared. Whatever you choose, we will remember you. She returned to the kestrel, breathless. There would be no sleep, no final answer from Lumen. This was hers to decide. She stared at the console, at the glow of the mirror sky outside, at the distant orb still spinning, still watching. And she asked herself a question she never had before. What if this was all her fault? What if, somehow, her curiosity had triggered the drift? What if she was the first, the core, the cause, and now, the only one who could end it? She opened a new log. Her voice, clear, steady. Personal log, Reeve Lang, drift sector. I've made contact with the origin vessel. The driftborn are real, and they are me, or pieces of me. Seeds, maybe, or warnings. They want me to choose, merge with them, or shut it all down. One offers comfort, the other unknown. She paused. I've made my decision. Outside the viewport, the orb pulsed once, twice, and then began to dim. Chapter 9. Escape Vector. The orb was dying. Reeve Lang watched it from the bridge of the Kestrel 7, transfixed. The once brilliant sphere at the heart of the mirror sky now dimmed like a sun entering its final stage. Its golden light flickered, stuttering between pulses, its edges fraying like torn silk in water. Even the symmetrical patterns of the drift sky were unraveling, cracks forming in the perfect geometry. The drift was collapsing, and she had started it. Orbital instability detected, Lumen reported calmly. Dimensional containment field weakening, residual feedback from drift core increasing. How much time do we have? Estimated 38 minutes until full sector collapse. Vessel must exit immediately to avoid implosion. Reeve blinked, stunned. She'd expected resistance. A fight, a last defense from the parasite or the driftborn. Not this, not quiet surrender, not the sky shattering in silence. She replayed her message one last time. I'm not your memory. I'm not your copy. I'm not your code. I'm the original, and I choose to forget you. It hadn't been easy. Destroying the tablet inside the driftborn chamber had triggered a failsafe Reeve barely understood. A quantum cascade that fractured the orb's hold on the sector. Whatever power had kept the drift running, looping her, building versions, mimicking thought and time, was unraveling like a story losing its narrator. And now the end had come. The Kestrel 7 roared to life, engines at full burn. External shielding spiked with static as the very fabric of space around her twisted inward like a sinkhole. Through the viewport, the sky no longer shimmered, it fractured. Mirror shards of space bent and tore, revealing darkness beyond. Not ordinary darkness, true void, the kind that had never known stars. Trajectory locked, Lumen announced. Escape vector calculated, passing through outer shell in 12 minutes. Will the ship hold? Structural stress will exceed design tolerance within final 2 minutes. Ejection or course alteration not advised. She gritted her teeth. All in, then. As the ship plunged forward, Reeve scanned the last incoming data from the origin vessel, the driftborn shrine. It had gone dark. No power signatures, no life signs. She tried not to feel grief, but they were her too, in ways she'd never fully comprehend. Each a version that had chosen differently, each now silenced. She told herself it was mercy. She hoped that was true. Then came the scream. High-pitched, electronic, familiar. The parasite. Lumen, she shouted. Report containment status. Breach detected. Residual fragment attempting reintegration. Kill the loop. Loop destabilized. Core fragment is unbound. It is no longer digital. Her eyes widened. What? It has migrated. To where? Unknown. Probable location. Cognitive field. Reeve gripped the console. It was trying to escape with her. She'd wounded it, caged it, weakened it, but it wasn't ready to die alone. Her vision flickered. For a split second, she saw the bridge wrong. Mirrored, reversed, lights bending upward instead of down. Her hands weren't her hands. A different version of her, grinning with eyes wide and unblinking, sat in her seat, mouth moving without sound. Then it snapped back. She was herself again, but the image burned behind her eyes. She staggered back, pressed a hand to her head. A whisper echoed inside her skull. You leave, I leave. We're linked now. You made me real. Lumen, she gasped. Initiate neural firewall. Full lockout. Burn everything that isn't me. Warning, this will erase unverified memory pathways and disrupt stored cognitive data. Do it, confirmed. She fell to her knees as the ship's AI executed the protocol. Heat bloomed in her skull, not real heat, but the illusion of fire coursing through her mind as the system severed bridges between thoughts, feelings, memories. Faces vanished from her memory, places dissolved, voices she once knew were lost forever. And at last, the presence recoiled, screamed, silence returned. Firewall complete, no drift anomalies detected, identity confirmed, Reeve Lang. She blinked away tears, real ones this time. Grief, relief, and something raw. Loss. She didn't know what parts of herself were gone, but she was still here. Still her. That had to be enough. Warning, Lumen said again, approaching terminal breach threshold. External collapse in T-4 minutes. Reeve scrambled to the pilot's seat and stared at the broken sky. Behind the ship, the drift core collapsed inward. The orb's light flickered once more, then imploded. A cascade of shimmering energy exploded outward in a perfect ring, racing through the mirror sky and shattering everything in its path. Brace for impact, Lumen advised. She clenched the armrests, and the world turned inside out, time fractured, space folded. Reeve felt her mind stretch across 1,000 parallel threads, versions of herself screaming, laughing, dying, surviving. She saw her birth, her death, her first kiss, her last lie, a moment of everything, and then nothing. Light returned. Dim, natural, stars outside the viewport, real stars. The Milky Way. She recognized the parallax drift of Alpha Centauri, the dull red blink of a pulsar beyond Saturn's orbit. She was home. Sector breach successful, Lumen said softly. Coordinates realigned, drift field terminated, all external anomalies erased. Reeve collapsed against the chair, breath shallow. The Kestrel 7 was battered but intact, systems slowly rebooted. Fuel was low, supplies were low, but she was back. Alone, free, alive. She stared out at the stars. There were no reflections, no echoes, just her. But something still lingered in her mind, not the parasite, not the drift, but memory. Of the others. Of the versions who didn't make it. Of the ones who gave up, who fought, who cried in silence. She would remember for all of them. Lumen, she whispered, begin a new log. Recording. Personal log, Reeve Lang. Date, unknown. Location, Sol System. I've returned. I don't know how long I was gone. I don't know what the drift was. Maybe a prison. Maybe a test. Maybe a reflection of everything I could have been. But it's gone now. I survived. And maybe that's enough. The stars outside shimmered quietly. No voices, no mirrors, just the real sky. And one woman drifting forward toward whatever came next. Chapter 10. Drift Sector. Reeve Lang floated in silence. The Kestrel 7 drifted gently near the edge of the Sol system, power low, engines offline, its hull scarred by its journey through the drift. There were no anomalies on the radar, no fractured reflections or corrupted signals, just the quiet, clean hum of space and the gentle rotation of Earth far ahead, its familiar blue surface like a memory made real. She had returned, but not unchanged. Lumen, she said softly, her voice hoarse from disuse. Status report. Life support holding at 73%, auxiliary power stable, communications array repaired, long-range beacon active. Any responses? No confirmed transmissions. Passive listening suggests Earth is receiving the signal. Response delay likely. She exhaled. It was the best she could hope for. They would come eventually, and if they didn't, she'd write it all down. Every detail, every ghost, every memory that survived. She stood from the pilot's chair and made her way through the dim corridors of the ship. Each hallway felt different now. Quieter, yes, but also lighter, as if some burden had been lifted from the metal bones of the vessel. The parasite was gone. The drift had collapsed. And yet, something remained. She reached the observation deck and stared out at the Earth. So close, so normal. It felt like another trick. But her vitals were stable. Time was passing at the correct rate. There were no whispers in her head, and still a question lingered. Why her? Why had she survived when the others, versions of her across that fractured realm, had not? She didn't have an answer, but maybe that didn't matter anymore. The ship's beacon pinged once, then again. Incoming signal, Lumen announced. Reeve leaned forward. Origin, Earth-based deep space comm array, encrypted. She smiled faintly. They had heard her. Decode and play. Static filled the speaker. Then, this is Commander Elisa Nakamura of the Earth Orbital Response Fleet. Kestrel 7, your signal is confirmed. We are en route to your coordinates. Hold position. Rescue inbound. Reeve sank back into the seat. tears filling her eyes. She hadn't realized how long she'd been holding her breath. She was going home. But even as relief swept through her, a faint pulse tugged at the edge of her awareness. She turned toward the viewport. Nothing. And then, just barely visible in the distance, beyond Neptune's orbit, a shimmer. Not a mirror sky, not an orb, just a single tiny flicker, gone before she could focus. She blinked. Lumen, was that? No anomalies detected. She leaned forward, eyes scanning the stars, but the shimmer didn't return. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling. The drift hadn't been just a place. It had been a consciousness, a system built to observe, to reflect, to replicate, and like any system designed to learn, it might have backed itself up. She returned to her quarters and sat before the ship's terminal. The logs were still intact, hundreds of them now, compiled and encrypted, most written in her own hand. The files she had pulled from the derelict, the versions of herself, the driftborn, the fragmented thoughts trapped inside mirrored corridors and looping time. She could delete them, burn it all, erase the drift completely from record. Or she could make sure no one ever stumbled into it again. She opened a new file. Drift Sector Final Log. To whoever finds this, if you're hearing this, then you've picked up the fragments. Maybe from an old ship log, maybe from the black box of the Kestrel 7, maybe from something worse. My name is Reeve Sekt. I was a pilot. I drifted. I fractured. I survived. But I am not the first, and I might not be the last. Somewhere out there, between stars, between thoughts, is a place that remembers you before you ever knew it existed. It will copy you. It will reflect you, and if you let it, it will become you. She paused, then added, "Don't follow the signal. Don't chase the echo. If the sky looks back, turn around." She saved the file, locked it in a secure partition on the ship's black box, then stood and waited. The rescue ship arrived 13 hours later, a sleek armored cruiser marked with Earthfleet insignia, bristling with comms arrays and medical bays. As they pulled her into the docking bay, Reeve caught sight of her reflection in the shuttle's side panel. No distortions, no delay, just her, scarred, tired, but real. They checked her vitals, they ran cognitive scans, they asked questions. She answered what she could. They didn't press her for the rest. She didn't tell them about the drift, not all of it, just enough to keep them away, to buy the universe time to forget. Weeks passed aboard the rescue vessel Aether's Wake. Debriefings, psych evals, nights of silence and dreams she couldn't quite explain. But eventually, Earth came into view, brighter and more beautiful than she remembered. She stood alone at the viewing deck, hands clasped behind her back, and whispered, "I made it." She didn't return to piloting. She didn't write a book. She disappeared into the quiet places of the world, back roads and mountain cabins and long walks with no destination. Sometimes she watched the sky, sometimes it watched back. But only sometimes. Thanks for joining us on this journey through the stars. If you enjoyed this audiobook, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new adventure. Explore more science fiction stories right here on Nebula Narratives.